Has the towpath survey been done yet?
Yeah, I'm Bill on Heritage Advisor for the Trust's There's a few words about the history of the Hertford Union Canal. It was originally called Duckett's Cut, Duckett's Canal, or Duckett's, and that was because it was named after George Duckett, who was the promoter of the canal back in 1827. The canal was completed in 1830, but there was quite an interesting agreement that was formed between the Regent's Canal Company and George Duckett to enable him to build his canal. And that was that during the summer months, when water was at a premium for the Regent's Canal, George Duckett had to prevent any water coming from the Regent's into his canal. So at the stop block, which is at the junction with the Regent's Canal, he had to maintain a head of about 6 inches during the summer, and then during the winter he was obliged to take excess water from the Regent's to drain it off into that unit. But this canal was a commercial failure. Within a year of its opening in 1830, George Duckett was bankrupt, and the canal was being opened toll-free to boaters. And it wasn't until 1857 that the canal was taken over by the Regent's Canal Company and formed part of its network. In 1929 it became part of the Grand Union. The project that we're doing now is part of a long-term project to maintain the Regent's Canal and the Hertford Union. And we've been concerned for the British Waterways, which was the predecessor organisation, the Canal River Trust, and the Trust have been concerned for about 20 years about the condition of the towpath wall and the offside walls of the Regent's Canal and the Hertford Union Canal. And what we're trying to avoid is unplanned failures of these structures. That's very expensive. You have to effectively stop the canal, which means all sorts of revenue streams from the trust are blocked. You then have emergency works, which is always an expensive way of doing things, that's reactive works. So we're trying to get ahead and take a strategic view about repairing structures long before they fail. So within the Hertford Union Canal, we dewatered this waterway last winter between January and April 21, and one of the principal benefits of that phase of work was to allow us to do a detailed inspection of all the structures that are normally obscured below the waterline. And as a result of that, we were able to highlight the priority areas where there were really sort of acute problems with the structure. Some of those were repaired last year, but we're now really getting into it in earnest. And we've actually got 4 work sites in progress at the moment. Grove Road Bridge, we've got the temporary dams immediately above Grove Road Bridge, which you can see if you go up there. That stopped water coming into the canal, and that's allowed, with the top block drained and open, that's allowed us to drain water down to the level of the sea now. So we've got works going on at Grove Road Bridge. The next bridge down is Old Road Bridge, the New Bridge, which is about 200 metres up there. Creek Old Bridge, which is where we are now, and top block, block 1. Now, these 4 work sites are being worked on by our framework contractor, Kia. Gentleman behind you is from Kia. And we've actually got a team on site. They've gone for the tea break at the moment, but we've actually got a team on site today and tomorrow, giving people the opportunity to see the work that we're doing. In a minute we're going to go down into the canal, but first of all I want to explain to you this bridge and the challenges that we face with this structure. This is a very special bridge as a sort of heritage asset. It has the highest level of heritage statutory designation. It's not only a Grade 2 star listed building, but it's also a scheduled monument. And that applies also to its very close sibling, Parnell Road Bridge, which is the next one down. They're very similar bridges in appearance. Although this one is different in having this lovely swept wing walls on the towpath side. Part of the reason for the scheduled status of these two bridges is the open work cast iron railings at the top and the cast iron beams, and the very open view of the structure you get. But you can see it's in a very, very poor state above water line, mainly because of the graffiti. This is a challenge that the Trust faces in many of its urban areas. Despite having the natural surveillance of lots of residential blocks on the offside, we still get youngsters graffitiing. It's a very tempting canvas, being such a big area of brickwork. So one of the things we're going to be doing when we've completed this phase of work below waterline, we'll be putting water back in the canal, and then we'll be bringing our work boats up, which is Duckets, which is moored at Bow Wharf, and on that boat we have a so-called Thermatech machine, which is a steam cleaner, and we'll be able to take the graffiti off the surface of the brickwork without causing damage to the historic fabric. We'll then repair the loose bits of mortar pointing and some of the cracks that you can see just to the left of the word make. You can see a vertical crack. These cracks will need to be stitched and tied by a specialist bricklayer, and then we'll put on a sacrificial coating of microcrystalline wax solution, which will be at 50% dilution to prevent it being all shiny and glossy, which is what you don't want on the historic structure. And then we'll be fixing wooden trellising onto the structure so that we can still read the historic structure behind, but it will actually hopefully deter people from spraying graffiti onto it. Yeah, well that's our main sort of idea. But and then we have an adoption group working on this area here with their planters and planting vegetables and plants. And Aidan here is our supervisor working with that group, and he will be looking after the whole graffiti project when we come to do that in April and May. If we go down the walkway, I can just point out a few things to look at of works below the waterline, which is obviously the focus of what we're doing now. Steps. First of all, I want you to look immediately behind you on the waterway wall there. Just going to point some things out here. See this section here? This whole section has been rebuilt. At the bottom you can see bricks. Those are London red stock bricks, which have been very closely matched with the bricks that we found at the Bridge Narrows. You'll see some of the original bricks there, and actually they're absolutely perfect colour match, exactly the same dimensions. But at the top of those bricks, you know, vintage ragstone blocks, and that is the material that seems to have been used at this point going on now. So it was originally built in 1830. And the concrete piles, which you can see here, were put in probably in the mid-20th century, 1950s, 1960s, when it was obviously recognised by British Waterways that the walls were in such bad condition that they needed to be piled in front of. And they were changed with an iron rail, which is effectively the beams rail. And that would have been originally tied back some way into the ground behind, below the towpath. But in 1982, the National Electricity Generating Board constructed the 400 kilovolt power cable duct along here and would have chopped through all those ties, thereby weakening that structure. But we do believe that this original wall is running behind much of that piling, and so we've got little sort of glimpses of that original fabric at these Bridge Narrows. So as we go into the Bridge Narrows here, let's see the abutments of the bridge are constrained here. The towpath is brought in, and you've got these transition walls which are to guide boats through the bridge without causing damage, and that's why they're sort of a 45-degree angle. They're actually, the bridge approach here has actually got lovely sort of swept lines. It's got batter in the vertical plane, but also a curve as well. And that's just to sort of help guide boats through. The sort of vessels that we're using, the Hertford Union, right the way up until all the way up to the 1960s, were Thames lighters. They're quite big, wide beam boats, fully laden with cargoes such as timber, various timber yards along the Lee, coming up from the Thames and then round again. Now on the offside, which is the non-towpath side, we have the wet abutment, which is for obvious reasons. What's happening here is quite special really. Our contractor, in looking for the foundations for the original walls, found the original foundations, and we've been in discussion with Historic England, which is the source of the funding for this project, but is also the body that administers the scheduled monument, and we have permission to rebuild those walls on their original lines, and that has a number of benefits. It improves the setting of the bridge. It makes the appearance of the bridge, as you look at it, through what is actually very clear water in the Hertford Canal. It also improves its resilience against boat impacts, because you've got a much sweeter line of approach for boats coming through the Narrows. And it also sort of helps to celebrate the heritage status of the structure.
What will do?
That is that's a gas lamp post. So the bottom of it is cast iron. The top part of it is mild steel. Mild steel, do you know? Yeah. Which is, we know that because it's bent. Cast iron shatters, which is what's happened to the bottom, and the top half is bent. Well, it was in the canal until last week, and then our team of volunteers hand pulled it out. We thought we were going to need some lifting equipment, but no, we managed to pull it out by hand. Sonny, shall we go forward?
trade.
I just wanted to show people.
Wasn't quite flat.
Here, sorry.
It's intentional.
Yeah, I know.
See here how the wall is canted over by a few degrees. You've got that sort of batter, so it's not only the front face but the back face of the wall. That is deliberate. So you've got this sort of lovely sort of swept lines coming round. This wall is actually being built as a freestanding structure, so it's independent of the modern concrete wall that was built a few years ago. Which is actually made of plastic, believe it or not. There's actually plastic formwork in front with concrete behind. So we'll be putting a separation membrane down the front of that and then pouring concrete behind brick walls in lifts. And then we'll have a new approach wall on its original foundations.
Sorry, so you're bringing this section forward? So previously it was just this?
Well, originally it was that. That's the original foundation there. And then when we found big teeth bucket marks in the brickwork, so that had been grubbed out by a big machine, probably during the development of that site.
Oh, right.
Because it had been a sort of navigation hazard. But we're now reinstating that structure, and it will improve the arrival experience, if you like, at this end of the bridge. And you've got this rather sort of awkward remnant of the structure here, which would be lovely sort of curves. And on the top there'll be a concrete capping, which has the continuation of the batter, and then a bevel around the top edge, and then an acid etched top surface, so you can see the aggregate, which will provide a nice sort of grippy surface for people to stand on. So that'll be flush with the concrete wall at that level. And then around here you can see the wall on the downstream side, which is in a much advanced state. And the reconstructed stop block roof here, that's obviously allows us to section off this bit of canal and dewater it in future.